I noticed the same man standing outside my apartment for the third night in a row, and this time he was holding a pair of bolt cutters. I live in Tucson, Arizona, in a ground-floor unit of a small complex near the university. I'm a grad student, 25, and I live alone. My roommate had moved out 2 months earlier, and I hadn't found a replacement yet, which meant the second bedroom sat empty, and the rent sat heavier on me than I liked. Nothing about my life before that week felt remarkable in any way. It started on a Sunday. I was up late working on a paper, blinds open because I liked the breeze, when I noticed a man standing across the parking lot near the dumpsters. Not doing anything, just standing, facing my building. I didn't think much of it. People wait for rides, smoke cigarettes, kill time. I closed the blinds and went back to work. Monday night, same spot, same stillness. This time I looked longer than I should have, and he didn't move at all the entire time I watched him, which felt wrong in a way I couldn't fully explain. I told myself it was a coincidence. People have routines. Maybe he lived nearby. Tuesday, I texted my friend Priya about it, mostly to talk myself out of being paranoid. She told me to take a photo if I saw him again, just in case. I didn't think I'd need it. Wednesday night he was back, except this time he was closer, near the side of my building, partially obscured by the stairwell that led to the second-floor units. I got my phone out and managed one blurry photo through the blinds before he turned and walked off into the dark. I called the leasing office Thursday morning. They said they'd increase patrols, which meant nothing because the complex didn't actually employ security, just a sign claiming they did. I started parking under the streetlight instead of my usual spot, started leaving the porch light on overnight, started double-checking the sliding door lock obsessively before bed. Friday, nothing happened. I almost let myself relax. Saturday night, I heard a scraping sound near my bedroom window, around 1 a.m. Metal against metal, slow, deliberate, the kind of sound that doesn't belong to wind or branches. I lay frozen in bed, phone in hand, listening. It stopped after maybe 10 seconds. I told myself it was a cat, a raccoon, anything except what my gut was telling me it actually was. I checked the window in the morning. Faint scratch marks near the frame, low enough that someone standing outside could have reached them easily. The screen had a small tear in the corner that hadn't been there before. That's when I stopped trying to convince myself I was overreacting. I called the police and filed a report, showed them the photo from Wednesday, explained the pattern over the week. The officer who came out walked the perimeter, photographed the scratch marks, and told me bluntly that it looked like someone had been testing the window, likely checking whether it was an easy entry point. He said to consider staying elsewhere for a few nights if I could. I went to Priya's that night. I told myself I'd go back once things settled down. Tuesday night, 9 days after I first noticed him, my phone rang at 11:40 p.m. Unknown number. When I answered, there was nothing for a few seconds, just breathing, then a man's voice, low and unfamiliar. "You weren't supposed to leave." I hung up and called the police immediately, hands shaking so badly I could barely speak my own address. They traced the call to a prepaid number registered through a gas station 2 miles from my old apartment, purchased with a card, not cash, which gave them something to work with for the first time all week. The card belonged to a 41-year-old man named Gregory Aldecoa, who, it turned out, had been employed by the same leasing office I'd called on Thursday. Not as security, as a maintenance contractor with a master key to every unit in the complex, including mine. Detectives pulled his work logs. He'd entered my unit twice in the past month, under the listed reason, routine inspection, neither of which I had requested or been notified about, both time-stamped during hours I was at class. They arrested him 2 days later at his apartment, less than a mile away. Inside, officers found a folder with printed photos of my building, notes on resident schedules, and a spare key cut to match my unit's lock, along with similar materials connected to 2 other women in nearby complexes he'd also serviced over the past year. He was charged with stalking, unlawful surveillance, and burglary tools possession, with additional charges pending, tied to the other 2 cases once investigators finished building those files. I testified at the preliminary hearing. He didn't look at me once the entire time. When the judge read the charges, his expression didn't change at all, like none of it surprised him, like he'd already accepted this was simply how it would end. I moved across town anyway. I didn't trust the locks in that complex again, not even knowing he was finally behind bars. The leasing office sent a generic email to residents about an employment matter, and nothing more specific than that, which told me they cared more about liability than about what almost happened to me. Gregory Aldecoa is currently serving an 11-year sentence. I still think about that voice on the phone sometimes. Calm, certain, like he already knew how the story was supposed to go. He was wrong about how it ended, but I think about how close he came to being right. Or one morning, just to test something. When I got home that night, it was gone. And so was a chair from my living room. I live in Boise, Idaho, in a small house I rent on a quiet street near the foothills. I'm 31, work remote in software support, which means I'm home most days, alone, blinds usually open because I like the light. Nothing about my life felt unusual until a few months ago, when small things started shifting in ways I couldn't quite explain. It started with a candle. I keep one on my kitchen counter, always in the same spot, same orientation. One Tuesday, I noticed it was turned slightly, facing a different direction. I told myself I'd bumped it cleaning. The next week, a throw pillow on my couch was on the opposite cushion. I told myself the same thing. Small, deniable, easy to explain away if you want to, badly enough. I started keeping a mental log without admitting that's what I was doing. Then came the tape test. I'd read somewhere that people do this to check if someone's been entering while they're out. A thin strip across the door frame, invisible unless you're looking for it, guaranteed to break if the door opens. I placed it before leaving for a grocery run, gone less than 40 minutes. When I got back, it was gone. Not broken. Gone, like someone had peeled it off carefully and either forgotten to replace it or hadn't cared to. That's when I noticed the chair. A wooden dining chair I keep at my desk for video calls had been moved into my bedroom, angled toward the window, like someone had been sitting in it, watching the street or watching the house across from mine. I called the police that afternoon, hands cold despite the heat outside. An officer came, checked the locks, found no signs of forced entry anywhere. Windows secure, both doors solid, deadbolt intact. He said without physical evidence of a break-in, there wasn't much he could officially document beyond a report, but he encouraged me to get a doorbell camera immediately. I had one installed within 2 days. For a week, nothing. I started to wonder if I'd imagined the whole thing, if stress had made me paranoid over a misplaced pillow and bad luck with a piece of tape. Then the camera caught him. 2:14 a.m., a man standing at my front door, not knocking, not trying the handle, just standing, completely still, facing the camera directly, like he knew exactly where the lens was. He stayed there for almost 3 minutes. Then he reached up, slowly, and placed his palm flat against the lens until the picture went black. When the feed came back almost a minute later, he was gone. I didn't sleep that night. I called the police immediately, sent them the clip. The detective who reviewed it said the way he'd located and covered the camera so precisely suggested he'd already studied the device beforehand, knew its exact position before that night, which meant he'd likely been near my house, watching, well before I'd even installed it. They increased patrols. Nothing happened for 9 days. On the 10th night, I woke up to a sound in my kitchen, not a settling sound. A drawer sliding open, then closed. I lay frozen, phone gripped so tight my fingers ached, and called 911 in a whisper, giving my address in fragments between breaths. The dispatcher told me to stay exactly where I was, door locked, not to make a sound. I heard footsteps cross my kitchen floor, slow, unhurried, stop just outside my bedroom door. I watched the handle. It didn't turn. Whoever it was just stood there, breathing, close enough that I could hear it through the door for what felt like minutes before the footsteps finally retreated. Police arrived to find the back door unlocked from the inside, though I knew I'd locked it myself before bed. No sign of forced entry. Whoever it was had a way in I still don't understand. The investigation is still open. They believe, based on the pattern, that he'd accessed a spare key at some point, possibly during a maintenance visit I'd had 2 months earlier, though the company has no record of any employee matching the footage. I moved out within the week. I don't know who he is. I don't know if he's been inside other houses on that street, using the same method, the same patience. I just know he was inside mine more than once, long before I ever knew he existed.